Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Younger Man's Game. I'm your host, Eric Wech, and I'm overcaffeinated and I'm underprepared. So let's get to it, shall we? Younger Man's Game is a podcast dedicated to exploring what it means to live life on your feet, on your terms, and to the very fullest. It follows my exploits, first and foremost of which is an upcoming through hike of the Pacific Crest Trail, a nearly 2,700-mile footpath that connects the U.S. Mexico border to the U.S. Canada border, and along the way, ranges over some of the most scenic, remote, and rugged terrain in the three westernmost U.S. states of California, Oregon, and Washington. Which is just a fancy way of saying it's a big, long hike. I'm going to be out there for about 5 months, if all goes according to plan. And if you've heard any of the episodes that I've filmed so far, you know that this hike has taken a whole lot of training and preparation to get to. And now that we are in the barrel here on our way to actually launching the hike, there's not all that much left to do, but it does sort of seem like, little tiny things are popping up here and there. So let's start with the updates on what's going on right now. My physical training for this hike, which has lasted now at this point for about 4-ish months, is wrapping up. In combination with the physical therapy that I talked about a couple episodes ago. All of that is going great. I wish my training mileages were a little higher on a daily basis than they are right now, but so it goes. I'm letting my body sort of tell me where I should land on that. And I'm very happy with the hikes themselves. You can see my pack back over there is starting to look basically like what it's going to look like on trail. There is even a food bag with about 5 days worth of food squirreled away in there. And you can see the water bottles on the side of the pack. I have upgraded my training hikes to 5-liter water carries. 5 liters is a big water carry. It's about as much as I'll ever expect to have to carry. It should get me about 20 miles. So if on this trail, if you're in an area where there's not a lot of water, and you hit a water source and your next water source is going to be 20 miles away, you need about 4 liters per mile. 4 liters per mile. No, a liter every 4 miles. 4 liters per mile. You'd be peeing a lot. You need to drink about 1 liter of water for every 4 miles. So if it's a 20-mile distance, you're gonna have to carry 5 full liters of water, which at 2.2 pounds per liter means you're carrying an extra, what is that, like 11, 12 pounds of water. It adds up. It definitely changes the way the pack feels and rides, and it makes the whole thing, that much more challenging in terms of the amount of effort you'll have to exert to get yourself from A to B. So I have incorporated those 5-liter weights into the pack itself. At first, I did it with just some free weights that I had laying around. I just shoved them in there. And then lately, I've just been putting 5 liters of water in my pack, as I will be doing very shortly. In terms of all of the gear, it's all here. I've got everything I need. I think, now I'm at the part where, I'm only a couple weeks from my start date. And anyone who's ever done one of these things before, you might relate to this. This is the part where you kind of start second guessing every single thing that's in your pack. I've unpacked and repacked that pack right there probably 4 times in the last 3 days. I just, and I'm not going anywhere with it. I'm just using it as a training pack. It is my actual backpack for the hike, but I'm just kind of picking everything apart and, deciding, do I want this version of this or that version? There's some gear that I own 2 of, and I like some things better than others. And then I'm sort of looking at the weights and thinking, well, do I really need this? And can I leave that? And that is just, I think, my brain trying to sort of come up with something to worry about because I feel pretty prepared for this hike. And so I don't really, but I think it's our nature. I think it's always like your mind's nature to forecast some kind of situation that's going to require you to have some concern or worry about it. And I think that's where my mind is focusing in the lead up to this hike, but it's all minor stuff. At the moment, I'm agonizing actually over whether to make myself a cozy for my Ziploc bags that I'm going to use to eat my meals out of. And it's like, that's a very minor. First of all, the cozy itself is made out of like this bubble wrap, like a foil covered bubble wrap insulation, like the stuff you use for windshield protectors. Anybody, if you ever get those fold out windshield protectors you put to keep the sun off your dashboard, it's that stuff. It's like a really thin little insulator that you can kind of DIY into a cozy. And I'm thinking like, oh, do I need to DIY that into a cozy? It's gonna be a lot of extra weight, and it's who cares? I will say I'm probably gonna do it because one thing you don't think about unless you've ever had to actually eat a meal out of a Ziploc bag before is that when you combine dehydrated ingredients with boiling water, you can't touch the bag for like several minutes. And like last go around, I got around that problem by just taking the Ziploc bag and dropping it into my cook pot. And then just holding the cook pot by the handle, but then you're like holding a little handle rather than just cupping the meal like a bowl, which is more ergonomic and feels more natural. But then again, the whole debate over discomfort versus weight, it's like this is how you pack your pack, and everyone's different when it comes to this. So can't tell you how you should do it, and at this moment I'm not even sure I can tell you how I'm going to do it. I'll be as excited as you are to figure that out. Other than that stuff, I'm kind of blown away by the amount of extra technology stuff I'm having to carry. And it's not a lot, by the way. This is everything. Everything is very miniature. I've got a little microphone and a transmitter that it's actually this microphone that I'm using, that I'm just going to shove in my pack. But then I also have, I have to be able to see the camera when I'm recording. And so I have a little magnetic receiver deal, like a monitor that clips onto the back of the phone, because I'm using my iPhone to do all this. I don't have a dedicated camera. And so yeah, and then I, like a little mini tripod, but by the end of it, it's a few pounds of gear. So I'm gonna probably carry that in my hip pack. I've got a larger hip pack that I'm taking this year, and I'm kind of thinking I'm gonna take my small hip pack too and just run one on each side, kind of run like akimbo hip packs. I think I'll call that the Doc Holiday. Have two guns, one for each of you. If you know, you know. Yeah. What else is going on? Oh, it's looking pretty warm in the first section of my hike, so we're gonna. I'm ditching my 4-season pad. I'm actually just gonna have that ready on standby if I need to have it mailed somewhere. I got some friends who've agreed to do that, and also the ice axe, which you can see right up there, right there. I'm not taking the ice axe. I'm not even going to have it mailed to Kennedy Meadows. It's looking like the snowpack is minimal this year, and we might get a couple more storms, but I don't think anything that's going to create ice axe, conditions. And if I'm wrong about that, there are places to get an ice axe along the way, but I don't feel like carrying that piece of gear, up the West Coast without a good reason. It does look pretty cool, but I don't really do things because they look cool when it comes to hiking anymore. Okay, so let's talk about the plan for the next several episodes of this podcast. So today we're going to cover the first of 5 episodes that cover individual sections of the Pacific Crest Trail as I expect to experience it. Those sections are the desert, the Sierras, Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. And then after those episodes are posted, they'll be posted once a week, every Friday at 3 p.m. And then the following week, there's a 6th episode, which I'm not going to talk about in advance, but you'll see it when it posts. And then starting in early May, I think the first week of May, I will start posting videos that are me actually on trail and trying to complete this hike. That delay, I think I've mentioned before, but that delay is designed for 2 reasons. One, it's going to take me some time to, sort of record content and gather thoughts and write out my thoughts, and then, record the episodes and edit the episodes and get ready to publish the episodes. So that 3-4 week delay will give me time to sort of make sure I can keep to some kind of a schedule. And also, I'm going to have to actually find towns with Wi-Fi where I can post, because you got to publish stuff by uploading it. So it's going to require Wi-Fi connections to do that, and I don't imagine I'm going to run into those very frequently. So, fingers crossed I'm able to stay on some kind of a weekly schedule once I'm on trail, but we'll see. And since I'm hiking northbound, which, by the way, I'm going to say from now on we're calling that Nobo, because that's what you call it. Northbound is Nobo. Southbound is, yes, Sobo. You got it. I'm hiking northbound, so I'm going to release these episodes in order from south to north. So it's going to go the desert, then the Sierras, then NorCal, then Oregon, then Washington. So anybody out there contemplating a Nobo hike, you can listen to these and you'll have some idea of what to expect. If you're planning a Sobo hike, do me a favor and just listen to them in reverse. So, yeah. Okay, let's get started. The desert. First section I plan to encounter. What is the desert? Let's start with what is a desert. Basically, and a lot of this information for this episode, by the way, I pulled from both National Geographic, natgeo.org, and the USDA's Forest Service website that relates to the Pacific Crest Trail, and also some of these national forests and parks that I'll be walking through. So, what is a desert? Well, basically, it's anywhere that's super dry. Deserts are pretty diverse in terms of how they present and the different kinds of landscapes, biomes, and flora and fauna that live there. But what they all have in common is that they don't get a whole lot of precipitation. The general cutoff is about 10 inches or 25 centimeters of rain per year, although some deserts, as we'll talk about in a minute, defy that. Deserts are all over the earth. There's at least one on every single continent. They cover altogether about 20% of Earth's landmass, and they are home to just about 1 billion people, or right around 17% of the human population. There are 5 different types of deserts, which is something, again, I did not know. I probably learned at some point in my life, but I read about them, and so I'm going to tell you all about them. The first is the subtropical deserts. These are deserts that exist between the 15 and 30 degree latitude marker, both northern and southern. Basically, like picture 2 strips around the globe that sort of sit on either side of a 30 degree wide band in the middle where the equator is. And these deserts are formed by air circulating to and from the equator, essentially picking up moisture and dropping moisture and heating and cooling in a predictable way that creates deserts on every single continent that live inside that sort of band of 15 to 30 degrees. Examples are the Sahara, which is the largest desert on the planet, the Kalahari, and the Tanami in Australia. Tanami? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Second kind of desert are coastal deserts, which form, as you might imagine, on coasts. Yeah, okay. They are formed by cold ocean currents. So basically, the ocean air, which is moist because it's air over the ocean. It's also cooler because it's, sitting over a giant mass of water, which sucks heat out of it. It circulates onto land, dumps the water, the air falls and heats back up again, and it's dry in that process, and you get deserts. Good example of that would be the Atacama Desert in Chile. There are also rain shadow deserts. These are pretty cool, and they're basically a rain shadow desert is the product of a mountain being something that is able to stop, or I should say, alter the flow of moisture in the air. So essentially, if you picture a big mountain, as air moves up to one side of it, it's got moisture in it. It gets pushed up the side of the mountain, and it essentially drops the moisture in the process. It creates the windward side of the mountain, and then that's why if you look at a lot of mountain ranges have like a wet side and a dry side, because by the time the air gets up over the top, the moisture is now gone. It drops back down. It has cooled by the moisture coming out of it. And then it heats back up, and now it's hot, dry air, and you get a desert on that side of the mountain. It's called a rain shadow desert. A great example of this, Death Valley is a rain shadow desert. It's a rain shadow of the Sierra Nevada mountain range. And actually, not just Death Valley, but anyone who's ever driven up US 395. It's a highway that runs from Southern California, I think, all the way up to Vancouver, but it doesn't go through the same valley as I-5, which is the main sort of interstate that goes north and south through California. It runs to the east of the Sierra Nevada mountains, and as you're driving north, you can see you're just in this like moonscape the entire way up. And if you look to your left, you see these massive jagged granite peaks, and that's the sort of edge of the eastern edge of the Sierra Nevada range, which is shaped kind of like a wedge. If you were to look at it somehow, if you could somehow like slice a profile and look at the mountains, they start sort of kind of, very gradually on the western side, and they come up, and then like down the eastern side, it's like this kind of steep slope, and you get a big rain shadow desert on the other side of it. And then you have interior deserts. Interior deserts are formed by, I guess, just the area of the landmass being far enough from the ocean that no moisture is left in the air by the time it gets there. The example they listed on the Nat Geo website is the Gobi Desert in China. And then finally, you have polar deserts, where it's too cold for the water to melt. So in the Arctic and Antarctic, apparently, even though there's water everywhere because it's all covered in snow, they're considered deserts because you can't drink snow unless you have a special snow drinking apparatus that you can. I think you can rent those from the lizard people when you go beyond the ice wall. You know what? This is the wrong podcast for that. Let's talk about the desert section of this hike. So where are we actually going to start? So the desert section of the PCT is the southernmost section of the trail. And it is entirely in California. It stretches from Campo, California, which is a town right on the border between the U.S. and Mexico, as its southern border, all the way up to Kennedy Meadows, which is like mile 702. Technically, some people consider Walker Pass to be the end of the desert section, which is like mile 650. You're splitting hairs, but most people think of Kennedy Meadows as the kind of official end of the desert section and the beginning of the Sierra section. The parks and forests that you pass through a lot of parks, forests, monuments, and wilderness areas in the desert section. I'm not going to name all of them. I'm just going to kind of cover the big ones, or at least the big est ones. So you start off in the Cleveland National Forest, and you work your way through there. And I think you might touch into the Anza Borrego State Park a little bit. I'm not sure if you actually travel into Anza Borrego, but you then, from there, you pass through the Mount San Jacinto National Monument, the Mount San Jacinto State Park, and then the San Bernardino National Forest and the Angeles National Forests before you make your way out. And the characteristics of the desert, make it so that I think a lot of hikers have a very love-hate relationship with it. And I was somebody who for a long time loved to hate on the desert. I'm not a huge fan of getting sand in my shoes. I don't particularly like it when it's too hot. I'd rather be too cold than too hot. And I don't like carrying my weight in water when I go places. So, there are definitely drawbacks to it. But really, truly, like the desert has some things going for it that are pretty unique and I think worth mentioning. I mean, for one thing, if you are someone who likes a sunrise or a sunset, you can't beat the desert section. I mean, it's every single day. It feels like you see both a sunrise and a sunset that would be a postcard worthy event to anyone else or on any other part of the planet. I mean, it really is just like a twice a day you get this like magical show as the sun rises and sets, and it's pretty awe-inspiring stuff. And frankly, with the exception of summer, which indeed is unbearably hot, like winter and early spring, and even like late enough into the fall, you get like perfect hiking weather. It really it's kind of 70 during the day and like 50 at night, and you just feel like you're just strolling along. You don't feel particularly hot or particularly cold. It's kind of perfect, and of course, way more life in the desert than you might. I think when people picture a desert, maybe you picture like a cartoon, like sand dune type thing, or maybe you're actually picturing that planet from Dune with like the people in the suits where they drink their own pee. This is not what the desert section of the PCT looks like. There is just an abundance of life on this section. It really is just like teeming with all different kinds of birds and a whole range of flowering bushes, small shrubs and trees. You don't get like really big trees in the desert because there's not enough water to support a tree that big, but you get a lot of like manzanitas and chaparral and, just little scrub oaks and stuff. And it's a garden. It's a garden filled with life, and it really is a beautiful, beautiful place if you are there at the right time of year. And of course, the caveat here is like you just kind of don't want to be there after May because it just gets brutally, brutally hot. But I like starting in the desert. I like a Nobo hike, and because for one thing, the best time of year to find water there is obviously before all the small water sources dry up. So that's going to be spring. And for all the reasons I just mentioned, that makes it a pretty nice time to be there. And also, the elevations, both the gains and losses that you see within your first couple hundred miles are pretty easy. Like there's nothing that really challenges you. So if you're just getting started on the hike, especially if you haven't had time to train the way you want to train, it is a good way to go because it gives you that kind of break-in period. But the desert itself, let's talk a little bit more about what kind of deserts we're gonna see here. The topography, I guess, would be the first place you start. You're sort of just like you're on like the edge of the Sonoran Desert, and both applies to like the first few miles of the hike before you start getting into these mountains. But also technically, you're kind of in the Sonoran Desert pretty much all the way until just after San Jacinto when you go through the San Jacinto Pass. Um, and the Sonoran Desert is an interesting desert because it is not just one thing. First of all, it's a pretty massive area that encompasses all of the eastern and southernmost portions of California, and stretches into most of southern Arizona, all the way up to like Flagstaff. It includes Phoenix, and it also stretches down into Mexico, into the states of Sonora, which you might expect, but also Baja California and Baja California Sur, which goes all the way down to the southernmost tip of the Baja Peninsula. And so you can imagine in a place that big, and especially encompassing like all those different sort of regions and around that much coastline, like there's going to be a lot of different things happening in that desert, and indeed there are. The biomes that you pass through, if you were to somehow pass through all of the biomes in the Sonoran Desert, include, and I couldn't believe that it was this many. So you have wet, what's called thorn scrub, which is like wet desert. And then you have chaparral, which is most of what you'll see when you're in the sections you see on the trail. You have just good old fashioned desert. You have tropical forest. If you go way south down into Baja California Sur, you have semi-arid grassland, deciduous forest, very small deciduous forest, just like one grove of aspen on the eastern edge of the desert. You have coniferous forests, obviously, just pine trees, and you also have tundra up by Flagstaff. And that's kind of crazy to think about. That tundra, that you might have, like a tundra biome is something like you find those as far north as Alaska, and I guess the southernmost one is in the edge of the Sonoran Desert. So it's a really diverse area, and it's also like the wettest desert on Earth. Look that up. It encompasses. Let's see. All right, don't know where. There you go. It encompasses about 260,000 square miles, and it is the wettest desert on Earth. It gets up to 19 inches of rainfall in some places. So there you go. Is it even a desert? 10 inches the cutoff. We get 19. Who knows? Leave that to somebody else to figure out. But mostly, I have actually hiked the desert section before. In 2024, I hiked about the first 500 miles of it, and I can tell you from experience, you see a lot of chaparral. You definitely see coniferous forest, especially when you get up in the higher elevations. Definitely see some semi-arid grasslands. Don't know about thorn scrub because I guess, yeah, sure. It was a little wet when I was there, but then I was there in the spring. So, basically, yeah, it's a pretty cool place. There's a lot of different kinds of plants and animals that live in the Sonoran Desert, even from one end to the other. I mean, you can imagine from tropical forest all the way to tundra. You're talking about totally different species of flora and fauna that live in those two areas, but they all live in the same desert, and so it's a pretty cool place to walk through. Like I said, it'll encompass just under the first 200 miles of the hike, and I will technically be in the Sonoran Desert as I walk into the first mountain ranges that I'm going to encounter, which are called the Peninsular Ranges. So Peninsular Ranges in Southern California, if you look at a map, basically it's like this: the Peninsular Ranges are basically all of the little mountain ranges that sort of dot the landscape at the southernmost corner, the southwest corner of California, and the ones I'll be walking through are the Laguna Mountains first, the highest of which is Queapape Peak. Definitely not pronouncing that right, or maybe, I don't know. That's a pretty small one, and again, these peninsular ranges they're not terribly tall. The tallest peak there is Queapape Peak, and that's only 6,300 feet. Santa Rosa Mountains, again, tallest mountain is Toro Peak there. That's 8,700. They get taller as you go north. And then you get to the San Jacinto Mountains. And that Mount San Jacinto is the tallest tallest peak in the Peninsular Ranges at 10,834 feet, or 3,302 meters. I got to stop real quick and talk about the name San Jacinto, and I don't know why I have to stop and talk about this, but I've hated the name San Jacinto, or saying the name San Jacinto like that, for like 20 years, because the word is actually Jacinto. It's San Jacinto. It's pronounced like an H, right? And like the reason it bugs me is because I lived in Southern California for a long time, and I drove to La Jolla, right? Like Jolla, La Jolla, right? I once visited San Jose, Jose, San Jose. And then you go to San Jacinto, and I'm like, why? Why are we calling it San? I feel like we're missing something. But then again, I live right now closest to the biggest U.S. city that has like Detroit, right? That's a French word that should not be pronounced that way at all. So, who knows? Pronounce it however you want. San Jacinto Peak, however, is the tallest peak you're going to run to in the Peninsular Range, and then from there you basically cross through a mountain pass called San Jacinto Pass that basically connects the San Bernardino and Coachella valleys. Coachella Valley in the east is where Palm Springs is. San Bernardino Valley on your west is where, San Bernardino is, and all of like the Inland Empire neighborhoods around Los Angeles. And then you walk from there. Basically, when you walk across that pass and you start into the San Bernardino Mountains, you have entered into the transverse ranges. Transverse ranges are essentially as the name might imply, they kind of go across, right? And if you look at a map of Southern California, the San Bernardino and San Gabriel Mountains form this kind of like east-west ridge that separates the valleys of Southern California from the what lies to the north in the case of, from like Antelope Valley or San Joaquin. But basically, those transverse ranges are the San Bernardino Mountains and the San Gabriel Mountains, both of which the trail goes right through. And then you just catch a corner of the Mojave Desert around the Los Angeles Aqueduct. And basically from there, you make your way into the Tehachapi Mountains, which are still technically in the Mojave Desert. But then once you get up into higher elevations, you arrive at Kennedy Meadows and you get to the Sierras. So what am I going to be expecting when I'm on this trail? Well, so the climate in this area can be kind of all over the map. We know it's going to be very dry, which means you don't have year-round water sources. That's the biggest thing with the desert is you have to plan accordingly, depending on how wet or dry it is. And look, there are people who hike Sobo who don't get to the desert section until the end of their hike, meaning they're not getting there till August. And if you're walking through the desert in August, you are doing things a little differently than you are if you're walking through in March or April. But you can still do it. You just have to plan around the water sources that are there. And there are year-round water sources, most of which are either water caches or spigots or pumps coming from wells that have been installed. There are a few major like lakes and streams in the area that maintain water year-round, but they're not many because it's the desert, right? So it's an arid climate. Temperatures can kind of be all over the map. I'm expecting probably like lows in the 40s and 50s at night and highs in the 70s and 80s during the day. But that's very much, that's very much open to changing depending on, the individual particulars of what the weather's doing when I'm walking through. And you can get, obviously the closer to summer you get, the temperatures start creeping up in the desert. You can get into the 90s and up. And you're obviously not going to want to do a lot of hiking in full sun, 90-degree weather in the desert, but it can be done. Won't be expecting much rain at all. It does look like there's a small system moving toward the Southern California deserts next week, but I imagine that is going to be if anything, it's going to be a pretty small system, and I'm just not expecting to have a lot of rainy days while I'm out there. The mountains that of note that I'm going to pass by in this region, you have Mount San Jacinto is probably the first big one. And that's one of my favorite mountains in Southern California for a long time. While I lived in Los Angeles, that was like my weekend getaway because it's like a 2.5 hour drive, from LA, and you just zip right out. And like, it's actually like a pretty quick trail to get up from Idlewild, which is the town closest to it. I think I want to say it's like 8 miles or less. It's quick. So it was like I've been up to the top of San Jacinto. I mean, I don't know, like a dozen or more times, and I love it. I love that mountain, and I can't wait to see it. And that's once you like look out from the top of that mountain, which you're sort of looking out. If you look to the north and west, you're looking at the San Bernardino and San Gabriel. So it's fun because you can kind of look out and see the next two sets of mountains that you're going to walk through. And if you catch it on a clear day, you can pretty much see the whole thing because it's all just like one big bowl of mountains and desert. Once I am into the San Bernardino National Forest, the first big mountain you can go to, although it's not right on the trail, is Mount San Gorgonio. And Mount San Gorgonio is that is one of the I think it's actually the tallest peak in southern. I know it's the tallest peak in Southern California. It might be the tallest. No, it's not the tallest peak in California because Whitney's in California. But it's 11,500 feet, about 3,500 meters. And then, but that one, so to get there, unfortunately, like I might do it. The reason I say I might do it is because to get to the air, basically like there's a side trail that takes you from the PCT to the top of San Gorgonio. However, the place where that side trail spurs off is about at the end of the Mission Creek drainage section. And the problem with that is that the Mission Creek drainage is this giant series of interlinked canyons with a creek called Mission Creek running through it that a few years ago was completely destroyed by a hurricane, I think, which is weird because it's like 100 miles inland. But yeah, basically this massive storm system moved through and just dumped floodwater and boulders all the way down this canyon, and it just utterly obliterated any semblance of the trail. Like as soon as you start walking in that area, you realize you'll look at a map, you'll look at a GPS device, and it'll say you're standing on the trail, and you're standing in the river. Because of course, once the river redirects itself and moves itself around all the debris that it throws during a flood, like who knows? The trail might have been there, right? So it's a pretty tough stretch to walk because you have to basically walk in the river for like 20 miles. And if you ever walked like through ankle deep, river water, you know that like stones are slippery, stones move, and so you're constantly sort of having to balance yourself, and it's a slog getting there. It's so much so that somebody some number of seasons ago, looked up a workaround where you can get off and get away from the Mission Creek drainage about 10 miles in, about halfway through the section, by way of a couple of different ridges that you can just walk straight up and connect you to the next part of the trail, which kind of winds back around as it makes its way up into the San Bernardino Mountain high country. And I took that shortcut last time, as did everyone I know, because by the time you get to those first 10 miles of Mission Creek, you're not likely to be wanting to do 10 more miles of Mission Creek. However, if you want to go up San Gorgonio, that's what you got to do. And my thinking is that because there's basically no snow on San Jacinto, I don't imagine I'm going to be nearly as whooped as I was the last time I made this attempt, just because for me the hardest thing is snow. I don't mind walking with wet feet. I don't mind hot desert, but like walking through knee deep snow is like it's just grueling and exhausting, and I think it just wore me out to the point where by the time I got to Mission Creek, I was just not loving life. And I imagine I'll be in a little better place by then. Don't know though, so we'll see. Might skip Gorgonio altogether, but it's a very cool peak. I've also been up to Gorgonio a bunch of times, but just as like day hikes or whatever. The next mountain that I'll have the opportunity to climb is actually on the trail, and that's Mount Baden-Powell. That's not quite as tall. It's only about 9,400 feet. It is a pretty good view from up there though. And you could certainly, make the case for stopping up there for a minute. You can also theoretically hike up to the top of the tallest mountain in the Angeles National Forest, which is Mount San Antonio, known to the locals as Mount Baldy. That's just over 10,000 feet or 3,000 meters tall. And it's another sort of side quest. It would take a few hours to get down the side trail to get there because it's not right on the trail. Of course, you're going to pass by, tons of mountains in this area. So these are just kind of the highlights. It's not, meant to be a definitive, a definitive list of the peaks you're going to see in this region. In general, though, what you're going to see in this section is it's like the elevations ramp up to Jacinto, and then they immediately drop back down. You cross the pass, and I think you're down near like sea level at the pass, and then you kind of just ramp right back up into the San Bernardinos, and that's the elevations sort of get gradually lower as you work your way from east to west across the transverse ranges. So you're in like the more dramatic scenery as you first walk into San Bernardino, and then it goes sort of gradually less and less so as you work your way west. I'll cross the I believe it's the Cajon Pass. Yes, Cajon Pass. That's where I-15 basically cuts between the San Bernardino and San Gabriel mountain ranges if you were driving up to Las Vegas. That is also where the McDonald's is, for those of you who know when it's a very heavily traveled McDonald's by through hikers, because by that point you've just walked through the entire San Bernardino range and you're pretty hungry, and there's the McDonald's, so go get yourself some French fries or take on the McDonald's challenge, which I don't think I'm gonna try this season. I don't know. We'll see. I did it already last time, and I don't really feel like I need to eat McDoubles for 6 days again, but that's fine. We'll see. Yeah, and so that's kind of the what I'm expecting from the topography. In terms of like your elevation gains and losses, what I've found is that like even though the numbers aren't that tall, the high for the elevations you see in the San Gabriels and the San Bernardinos, the trails can be challenging. They I feel like they're actually a little steeper moving through some of those areas than they are just based on my experience hiking in the Sierras as well, which the Sierras have the tallest mountains on this hike, but there's some pretty gnarly sections in the San Gabriel and San Bernardinos that I think might just be due to the fact that maybe they're older trails and they were cut at a time that I don't know, whether they weren't taking into account quite as closely, like stock grading and things like that make some of the other trails a little more manageable. But it's definitely interesting landscape. In terms of towns, there are a few of these, and this is town is like I have a love-hate relationship with town, definitely. I think everyone who's ever done any long distance hiking does. Look, when you're out in the woods or desert in this case for weeks, days or weeks, and then you come up to a town, like it's an oasis, right? Like it's a wonderful thing to walk into town and be like, oh man, I'm gonna find a place to take a shower, and I'm gonna have a burger, I might have a beer. Like it's all trappings of civilization that are just fantastic. So in that sense, I love it, and I think everyone, who wouldn't, right? But like the other side of that coin is that the town has this magical ability to just completely destroy your legs. And what I mean by that is, as the farther you hike on a long distance hike, the more you build up your endurance and leg strength to the point where you can do 20, 25, 30 miles on a day, no problem. And you wouldn't think that like staying a night or two in town would diminish that in any way, but I somehow it does. And that when you that first day when you walk out of a town, it feels like it's like you're starting the hike over. I don't know how else to explain it, but I'm not a big fan of that feeling. In fact, I will go so far as to say I don't like the general mental state of walking out of town after having stayed there for some time. And I think it has to do again with like you're in this place where like there's a lot of convenience and creature comforts. And then all of a sudden it's like I'm gonna go back out and walk out where there's like I got to sleep on the ground and eat out of a Ziploc bag, and your brain just makes it 10 times harder than it would be, I think, if you just kept walking in the first place. But then again, you got to resupply, right? And towns are a great place to resupply. So I don't know how long I'm going to stay in any of these towns this go around. I will tell you from the last attempt, the town situation in the desert got a little overboard because everybody was just in at least everybody who started around the same time that I started. Up to about I would say like 5 days after my start date. I started on March 17th in 24, and everybody at that date and earlier was just getting hammered by snowstorms every weekend for if somehow every Saturday for like a month. There was just a huge storm system that would move through, dump rain on everybody in the desert and dump snow on everybody in the high country. And so I just ended up getting stuck with a bunch of people in town after town. And of course, you're also just like spending money when you're in town because everything costs what it costs, and you're just you all of a sudden you're just dropping cash left and right. So I think I was in Idlewild for like 4 days, and as my friend Grant pointed out, as our group left Idlewild, we left in a blizzard. Like the blizzard had not pulled out, and we walked out of that town in a blizzard because we were like, we're done spending money here. We're done being in town. So love-hate relationship with towns. The ones you're going to pass, the first one, I mean, there's a bunch of, I mean, look, Campo is technically a trail town, right? But you're like starting there, so you're not really. And there's bigger and smaller, there's, things that get called a town on like guidebooks that are like, it's like a gas station. So I'm going to limit this to like towns where there's like a, post office and like it's sort of a proper little town. First one you pass through is Julian. Julian's a nice little kind of touristy desert town. It's cute. It's fine. It's the big attraction in Julian is there's a place in town that gives you a free slice of pie if you are a through hiker. So I'll probably be stopping in Julian to get some pie. The next one, and this is the big one, is Idlewild. Idlewild is just right next to the trail where it goes through San Jacinto. I love Idlewild. Idlewild is a fantastic town. I feel like my theory on Idlewild is that it's actually being controlled by a coven of forest witches who live nearby and have cast a spell over everyone in the town. And I don't know how else to explain it because, first of all, let's start here. The mayor of Idlewild, California is a dog. His name is Mayor Max. He's a golden retriever. I've met him. He's a great leader. We can all look up to him. He's also like Mayor Max the Third, which means there's like a whole plan of succession. That town has decided that they're just going to have a dog mayor, and I cannot think of anything that would immediately make me more endeared to a place than learning that they've elected a dog as their mayor. But also above and beyond that, like honestly, everything about the town is amazing. From the fact that everyone is just it's not just that they're nice. Like I don't, yeah, I like nice people. I like people who have good manners, but they're kind. People in Idlewild are kind to you, to everyone they meet, to strangers, in ways that are honestly not that typical, especially in Southern California. One example of this, the Backpackers Campsite. So Backpackers Campsite is something that these trail towns all generally have somewhere, but the relationship with the Backpackers Campsite to the town proper is always not quite as simple as you might imagine, because one thing you have to consider is the Backpackers Campsite in a town is also a place where you might have some unhoused people staying occasionally. And there are towns that have relationships with their unhoused populations that don't want to put that anywhere near their sort of town center or the shops or whatever that you would want to advertise, especially if tourism is a big part of the reason why your economy exists. Idlewild puts their Backpackers Campsite like right downtown. It's like right in the middle of everything. And I just feel like that is a gesture toward the community of people who hike through there that like says, you're with us. You're like in the middle of us. Welcome. Come here, walk around. The post office is over there. There's laundry over there. There's like a bar and a pizza place. Like it's all right here. I know it's a small enough town that it's, I guess, not that impressive they put it right down, but they didn't have to put it right downtown. There's the next trail town you walk through is Big Bear. And there's a stark difference between those two places. When you walk through Big Bear, you notice the Backpackers Campsite is across the lake from the town of Big Bear. And unfortunately, to get across the lake, you have to have a car. I mean, it's like it would take you like a day to hike between those two places. So it's like that's what I mean. But when I say like they've just decided to incorporate backpackers, incorporate the community of people who like frankly don't look and smell the best to other kinds of tourists. They've incorporated them and put them right in front and center. There's also like this wonderful like kind of Salvation Army-ish store that you can walk to that has just like everything you could possibly need. A woman just offered me her donut one time. Like I didn't even know this person. She was just like, I made a comment. She got the last donut of this one. I was waiting in line behind her to get breakfast, and I was like, oh, that donut looks great. Oh, you got the last one, like jokingly. And we laughed about it. And then she went and had her breakfast. I had mine. And I wasn't sitting anywhere near. And then on her way out of the store, she comes out with a bag in her hand. She's like, hey, I know you mentioned this donut. If you want it here, like, I just wanted to give that to you. I'm like, what? This is a random act of kindness. Stuff like that happens all the time in Idlewild. I'm convinced forest witches, spell, whole town. That's why it's like that. Whatever it is, I love it there. I love the people. I love the place. And I love the mayor more than he's a very good boy. Okay, so Big Bear's the next town you get to. And aside from having a kind of aggressively placed backpackers campsite, it's also a pretty good town. Very expensive. And the vibe is very different. Like, whereas Idlewild is like the friendly mountain hippie pocket, Big Bear is like where the sort of greasy LA crowd goes to vacation. And like, it's just a different vibe. It's a different vibe. And I'm not as big of a fan of it, but the lake is pretty and it's in the mountains and you can resupply there. So great. Wrightwood is the next town after Big Bear. That's going to be basically right after you cross the Cajon Pass and get into San Gabriel Mountains in Angeles County. And that is, again, that's kind of a little side hike down a trail. It's not right on the trail, but it's close enough. It's like Idlewild in the sense that you just basically hike down the hill. Also, a nice little community there and a lot of resources for hikers. So, definitely a place to stop and resupply for sure. I think I'm actually going to be mailing a food drop there. From Wrightwood, your next major town, well, it's not a major town, but your next town is really Agua Dulce. Agua Dulce is on the far western end of the San Gabriel Mountains. Now, of course, the whole time you're walking between Wrightwood and Ogwood, also you're in the San Gabriel Mountains, which are, because they're a transverse range, they run just north of sort of the Inland Empire in Los Angeles, the western edge of the Inland Empire and Los Angeles proper. So like in theory, you could hike down the southern faces of those mountains and go out through the foothills, and you could end up in a place like Pasadena, which I would use a city, not a town. So like there is access to stuff, but it does require a more complicated hike to get out and get down to. So I would also say is going to be the next like trail town. And that's like right on the trail. And then from there you go. There's like Green Valley. It's like a little tiny thing. But then the next big resupply point is Hiker Town, which despite its name, is not actually a town. It's just kind of like a big hostel-y desert sort of campus thing where you can hang out and resupply and drink water and get ready for your crossing of the famous aqueduct section of the hike before you climb up into the foothills, the Tehachapi Mountains, where you will find the town of Tehachapi. Again, not right on the trail, but close enough. And there are trail angels and all kinds of people that can shuttle you back and forth from those 2 points. And then that's it. Then you make your way over Walker Pass and you get to Kennedy Meadows and you are up and out of the desert section. What am I expecting out of the desert this time? What do I expect to see? What should one expect when walking through the desert? Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens in this section. Like, first of all, obviously the stuff that goes without saying, like it's going to be very hot and I'm going to have to really keep an eye on water consumption and making sure I'm carrying enough water to get from source to source. Because dehydration is like a huge challenge everywhere. I mean, dehydration will kill you faster than a lot of other things out there. So making sure that I'm staying on top of my water situation is going to be a big deal. So I'm expecting, especially in a year when it's looking like it's going to be drier and hotter, I'm expecting to have to, manage that. Sun exposure, also a big deal. Either a combination of sunscreen or clothing that covers me up. I'm actually wearing the shirt that I will be wearing on this hike. This is a Jolly Gear shirt, and that human being has developed probably my favorite shirt ever. I own this shirt because a fellow hiker saw the episode where I was wearing my Hawaiian shirt, where I said I wish somebody would make a Hawaiian shirt that was also a hiking shirt, and like they kind of did that. Like this is basically like, see the thumb holes here? So you put those on, like you got your hands covered from the sun, but it's a button down shirt. It's incredibly comfortable, but it also has the sun hood in the back. Ta-da. So I'm super excited. I've already taken this thing out with me on several training hikes. I love it. But keeping myself covered from the sun is going to be important. And it's going to be something I'm going to have to manage. Wildlife, there's not a whole lot of danger, in the desert. You've got probably the most prevalent thing that you sort of worry about running into are rattlesnakes. Just because that's like where they live. They live throughout they really live throughout the whole trail, but they're all over the place in the desert, and you got to kind of keep an eye out for them. Nice thing about rattlesnakes is they don't want anything to do with you, by and large. If you hear one rattling, it's because you've scared it, and it's like backed itself into a little corner. They're also kind of stupid. They don't like leave. If it sees you coming, instead of just like slithering away, it just like coils up and gets itself knotted into a little notch, and then it starts making angry rattlesnake noises at you. And if you keep walking towards it, it will potentially strike you and bite you. We don't want that. Baby rattlesnakes, juveniles, kind of those are the ones that you really got to watch out for, because the difference between a juvenile rattlesnake and an adult is that apparently the juveniles don't know how to modulate the venom in their bite. So instead of just giving you a little bit of venom, they just dump the whole clip. And they can actually be worse, the juvenile rattlesnake bites, in terms of the toxicity of them than an adult bite. So hopefully no bites from rattlesnakes. I'm shooting for 0 bites. We're going for 0 bites in 26. That's the vibe. There are other, in terms of mammals, you don't really see any bears. San Bernardino Mountains technically have a bear population, but it's like there's like 1 bear in that whole mountain range. There used to be more, but it's just not. It's not conducive. It's hot, it's dry. There's not a lot of stuff for them to eat. There just aren't that many of them down there. You do see you don't see them, but you do see evidence of big cats, cougars, mountain lions. They're all over the place up there, but they generally don't want anything to do with you. Picture like a house cat, but bigger. They don't care about you. They don't want. They're not interested. They're gonna go do their thing. They are hunters, you know. So if they think you're food and they think they can eat you, they probably will try. Generally speaking, at least in terms of the people who tend to get attacked by them, they select for smaller humans. So children would not want to be unsupervised walking out in these areas. Most adult-sized humans, frankly, look like too big of a challenge for them, so that they're not going to do their little ambush thing unless, and I shouldn't laugh, but mountain bikers kind of get attacked more. They're overrepresented in the attacked by mountain lions population. And the only reason I'm laughing is because this is because I was raised on Far Side cartoons, and I apologize for my brain, but I just I just picture a mountain lion sitting on like a cliff, and like this like giant cat toy, including like a bell, goes like ding 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 ding, like bouncing down the trail, and they're just like, ah, and like I don't know. That's just anyway. That's how I think of mountain lions attacking mountain bikers. Also, not for nothing, but I've almost been run over by a mountain biker like a dozen times, and I don't particularly care to have that experience. I mean, I don't mind sharing the trail with people on bikes, people on horses, but I feel like that's a one-way street with a lot of mountain bikers. They feel a little bit annoyed that they have to like slow down their extreme mountain bike descent because this like plodding hiker is in their way. So I'm sure they would have nasty things to say about me as well. But so I guess we can count mountain bikers as wildlife in this section. Other than that, what am I expecting out of the desert section? Well, again, it's, you know, there's a really like social component to it, I think. And it has a lot to do with the fact that there are so many towns where you can stop. It has to do with the fact that you've got the majority of people who through hike this trail do so on a no-bow hike, meaning they're all starting. And there's a thing about that where like everybody's starting and it's like they're excited and they're getting to know each other. And then there's these towns where you can hang out and we can split rooms and go have pizzas and beers. And it feels very social. This is like where you meet the people who you might end up having as like your trail family, you know, the whole way up the trail. You might keep in touch with the rest of your lives. And like, so I'm expecting that to be like a component of it. To what extent I'm going to participate in the socialization aspect, I don't know. I'm not sure. I do think, just for my own personal goals, I am expecting to go through this section more quickly than I did in 24, both because there's no snow and because I've already done it. You know, I've been there, done that. I've been through this section, and I'm so ready to get back to my beloved Sierras. I have been to the Sierras many, many times. They're my favorite mountains on this continent, possibly on this earth, although I haven't traveled to many mountain ranges that aren't in America, so couldn't really say for certain. But I love the Sierras, and I can't wait to get back to the Sierras. So between me and the Sierras stands the desert section, and my goal is to just hum right through there. So, you know, not too much time in towns, hopefully making good mileage, you know, and making my way up and out over Walker Pass, and come strolling into Kennedy Meadows, ready to start the second section of the trail, which is going to be the episode that we're going to talk about next Saturday. So, that's it for this episode of Younger Man's Game. I hope you've enjoyed sitting with me and talking a little bit about what to expect when you're expecting to do a northbound hike. Join us next week, and I will cover part 2 of this series, the Sierra Nevada, which is section 2, sort of the central part of California. And until then, I'm Eric Wech, and this is Younger Man's Game.